Everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. Come and eat. Listen.
So anyway, today I want to talk about, what am I talking about? The prophetic. And giving prophetic words. So this is something that we could talk a lot about. So I'm going to try to make it really quick. And as much as I possibly can, make it quick. And the first thing, I made a few notes in my trailer last night, and I'm going to hit them pretty quickly. But the first thing I want to talk about is the 11 levels of the prophetic. Yah wants us all to be prophetic. We're all called to be kings and priests, and He would like us all to be prophetic. Now, we're going to talk about that in a minute, but let me just go through, and I got this from Maimonides, the Rambam. He's a Jewish sage. We can get some good things from the sages, okay? Don't get me wrong. We just got to pick and choose. This is something I got from his Guide to the Perplexed, which he wrote back in the he lived, I think, in the 1200s. He was a Jewish scholar. And I tweaked it a little bit because he didn't have the Yeshua factor in there. But it's all backed up by Scripture. I don't have time to go through it all. I have it online. I have it. It's out there. I've put it together and it's published. But the first level of prophetic, and we're going to go from the lowest level to the highest level. There's 11 levels. The first level is divine assistance given to a person to induce or encourage him to do something good or grand. And I have a whole list of scriptures. Scripture often records this occurrence when it states, and the Spirit of Jehovah came upon so-and-so, and they did something or said something. That's the lowest level of the prophetic, of the moving of the Spirit into the realm of the prophetic. That's something that hopefully we're doing more often than not. It becomes just a way of life for us. But that is the lowest level. That's just putting a toe into the river of the prophetic. Number 2 level, as we're moving up. The person feels as if something came upon him and as if he had received a new power that encourages him to speak. Such a person is said to speak by the Spirit, the set-apart Spirit of Elohim. Often we see in the Bible the phrase, and the Spirit of Jehovah spoke to me. You're sitting there or you're praying, and all of a sudden you get a flash of inspiration, and you get, you know it's a word from Jehovah. That's prophetic. Or He gives you a word and you need to maybe give it out or whatever. That's the second level, from the bottom. From this point on, this is where we get into the realm of a prophet. This is what we call, up to this point, the first steps are the prophetic. We're all supposed to be prophetic. Because if we're walking in the Spirit, then these things should happen. We may not even be aware of it. But if you know about it, maybe you'll become conscious of it and you realize, hey, I am prophetic. Hallelujah. Now, getting into the area where it's a prophet, this is the lowest level of a prophet. Those who introduce their speech by the phrase, and the word of Jehovah came unto me, or a similar phrase. Sometimes we will see a prophetic allegory in a dream, such as the case with Zechariah and so forth. So this is just one little tiny step above the next one. I'm going through these really quickly. I don't have the scriptures. I can't give you all the scriptures, otherwise it would be an hour-long teaching. Number 4, the prophet hears in a prophetic dream something clearly and distinctly, but does not see the speaker, as in the case of the call of a young Samuel. You might hear his voice. You might hear a voice or in a dream. I have to confess, I'm like at the lowest levels of these things. Honestly. Most of us are. But some people have seen dreams and visions and seen things. And you can see where you're at in this. But I am at the lowest level. I get a lot of these things, but beyond this, not yet. Number 5, a person addresses the prophet in a dream. They're speaking to you in a dream. Clearly and distinctly, but does not see the speaker, as in the case of the call of young Samuel. But does not see the speaker, as in the case of, Samuel heard the speaker, but did not see the person. Oh, I'm sorry, that was 4. Number 5, I went back to 4. Number 5, a person addresses the prophet in a dream, as was the case in some of the prophecies of Ezekiel. So somebody is speaking to you in a dream. That's the next level. Now you don't just hear the voice, but you actually see the person. Number 6, an angel speaks to him in a dream. This applies to most of the prophets in the scriptures. Well, sometimes the angel that spoke to them in the prophet it says the angel of Yehovah. The word angel is malach, and it can mean messenger, and it could be Michael or Gabriel. Well, we have the example of Michael, but it could also be Yeshua. He's the messenger. He's not an angel, but he's a messenger. Angel in the traditional sense of the word. That was number 6. Number 7, in a prophetic dream, it appears to the prophet as if Yehovah spoke to him. Number 8, something presents itself to a prophet in a prophetic vision. He sees allegorical figures such as were seen by Abraham in the vision between the pieces in Genesis 15. For it was in a vision by daytime, as is distinctly stated. So this was like a day vision. It's like all of a sudden you are just like standing there, and all of a sudden you see this vision before you in day vision in broad daylight, like it's in real life. Number 9, the prophet hears the words in a prophetic vision, but does not see the person speaking to him, as is in the reference to Abraham. And behold, the word came to him, saying, This shall not be thine heir. In Genesis 15. This occurred to Paul on the road to Damascus. Number 10, the prophet sees an angel that speaks to him in a prophetic vision, as happened with Peter in his vision of the sheet from heaven. Also, we see some examples of this in the book of Revelation with John. And then, scroll up here. The highest level, he sees a messenger of Yehovah, literally the pre-incarnate Yeshua, that speaks to him in a vision, as was the case when Abraham was addressed by the angel or the messenger at the sacrifice of Isaac, and many other places where the messenger of Yehovah, Yeshua in his pre-incarnate state, speaks to his servants directly. And certainly Moses experienced that. This is just going over this real quickly to kind of show you, where you may be at and be encouraged. I'm really at the lowest level. I get a lot of words from Yehovah. He gives me divine revelation and all this kind of thing. Now and again I get a dream or a vision, but that's not an area where I move in a lot. My gifts are in other areas. So now I want to talk about the more practicalities of the prophet. There is one of the gifts of the Spirit is called the gift of prophecy. It's mentioned in 1 Corinthians 12, and again it's elaborated upon more in 1 Corinthians 14. Now, one can have the gift of prophecy, but not be a prophet. Maybe from time to time. It doesn't mean, just because you're prophetic doesn't mean you're in the office of a prophet. I think this is where the charismatic church really plays fast and loose with some of these things. They really, and I've read their books, and we've got to let the Torah be the foundation and the rest of the Bible, but they really, and that's why there's a lot of prophetic, and emphasize the word ick, as in icky. It gets really icky. I don't have time to get into the difference between a false prophet and a carnal prophet. the scriptures in the Tanakh make a distinction in the Torah and in some of the prophetic writings. And I don't have a chance to get into what I call charismatic witchcraft, where people use prophetic gifts to try to manipulate people to do what they want. Often you hear the word, God is telling me to tell you. That is a form of witchcraft. Trying to usurp authority and overpower people to get them to do your will. That's a form of witchcraft. I hear it all the time and I have zero tolerance for it. You do not find that phrase in the Bible except a couple of times. And it's done only by people that are legitimate prophets that wrote books, that have books named after them. But it's not something we should be running around doing. I'm sorry I don't have time to get into that. I've taught on this before. I got to keep it short because I want to give Clay plenty of time. But just because you have a prophetic word doesn't make you a prophet. You may be. Or he may be raising you up to be a prophet. But we need to make some distinctions between congregational prophets and apostolic prophets. Now, I used to travel around in the circles and prophetic circles in the charismatic movement with people, and they play fast and loose. There's, again, the good, the bad, and the ugly in it. And it is, you know, they really have read their books by the most notable ones out there that are the fathers of the prophetic movement. I could name names, but I'm not going to. And they have missed some of these fundamental principles. But there's a thing called a congregational prophet and an apostolic prophet. A congregational prophet is somebody that has the gift of prophecy, and in the congregation, they have learned to hear from Yah, which is a good thing, and they've learned to give prophetic words. But 1 Corinthians very clearly tells us is for edification, exhortation, and comfort, not for correctional. Not for correctional. We've told the people over the years in our congregation, if you have a correctional word from Yehovah, you come to the elders, and we will decide whether it's of Yah, discern it, because the prophets are supposed to be discern what other people say, and it's done by leadership and by known prophets. And then we will decide whether that needs to come out or not. And there have been times when we've allowed that. But if you're a congregational prophet, you just don't get up and give a prophetic word, because that can usurp over congregational apostolic oversight. It has to be done decently in order. And Yah may be giving you a word of correction, and you need to humble yourself and come before the elders and let it be proven and tried. And so otherwise a lot of damage can be done. But we want to encourage the gift of prophecy in the congregation. It may make you a prophet, but you're not an apostolic prophet. The apostolic prophet is a term that I came up with, and that would refer to the apostles. All the apostles were prophets. They all prophesied, at least the ones that wrote the books that we have record of. An apostolic prophet is one who has the authority of an apostle, and he has oversight over a congregation or congregations. He has the authority to bring a corrective word. He or she is at a higher level, and a higher level of spiritual maturity and understanding. You don't want people with prophetic words going out there. It's like having a teenager or a child driving a Ferrari. Okay? It's going to do more damage than good. They have to be raised up. Or maybe Yah will just raise somebody up himself. I mean, it can happen. There's Elijahs and Jeremiahs that Yah just raised up. But you've got to even prove these guys and make sure that what they're saying is true and lines up with the word and so forth. And that's a whole other discussion, because a lot of people, 2 years ago, we had a guy come in here and he claimed to be a prophet. And he was going to give a word. He just literally wandered into our camp. He came from another part of the state and wandered in here. And the elders got together outside of my trailer, and we started talking to him. And I started interviewing him. And he began to say things, and I put him to the test in the presence of the elders. Bill was there. Dr. Joe was there. I don't remember who all was there. And I put him to the test, and eventually he said something that was totally against the word. I said, you are not a prophet, and you're not going to give your word here. I said, you need to sit down and be quiet. You don't know the word, and you're speaking contrary to the word. And I said, you're welcome to, we were having a Rev Shabbat dinner that night. I said, you're welcome to sit, but I said, you are not going to give this word out. And you're not going to do anything to cause division and strife. And you're not, you can come, we'll open up the door to you, but you are going to be on your best behavior. Because he just walked in, he didn't have any food or anything.
He couldn't do it.
The service hadn't barely started, and he was already talking to some of the ladies. I told him, get out of here, you're gone. And he left. So you did not come under the authority of the elders of this congregation. You're not speaking according to the word. Get off this property. And he left. That was the end of that. If he had spoken according to the word and passed the test, then we would have heard his word. He was talking about the current president being the Antichrist. And I don't know. We don't know what. It was weird. And about, it was just weird stuff. All right. So, apostolic prophet has greater authority. He may be sent to nations, he may be sent to regions, he may be sent to denominations, or to congregations, or to people groups, but he has a larger sphere of influence, and authority, and his words will not fall. The congregational prophet, and he can bring corrective words, or she. It's not just it's gender neutral here. Now let me talk about, and be honest with you, I've found very few people that fit that. I don't know if there's any, really. Maybe there are some that are in training at this present time, but I don't know of any that I personally know about that fit that category. I believe the office exists, but we are such a mess. There may be out there. The two witnesses are coming, whoever they may be, but I think, he's raising up the Elijah and the John the Baptist generation to confront this society. So some of you may be prophets in training he's raising up. I may be part of that too. I don't know. I believe that. But as far as those who are operating in this, I put a lot of people to the test, and they have failed this. So they're immature. And just because a church or somebody calls them a prophet, don't throw our brains out the door. Titles can be thrown around left and right, and just because somebody has a title, or more likely they've ascribed to themselves a title, doesn't mean that they are what they say they are. We've got to use the word as a template. Let's talk about foretelling versus fourthtelling. The word prophetes, which is the Koine Greek word for prophet, can also mean not only to foretell, but more often than not to fourthtell. It means inspired utterance. So I hope that every time anybody gets up here in front of this camera, or in front of this congregation, or in any congregation, they may not be foretelling the future, though prophets can do that, real prophets, but as the Spirit wills, only as the Spirit wills and leads, but they should be foretelling. They should be speaking the word and the heart and the mind and the will of Elohim every time we get up here. That is an aspect of the prophetic. And that is more common than the foretelling. The words of a prophet, number one, we got to find out if they are a prophet or not. And that's, they cannot speak against the word of Elohim, and they cannot speak against the written word or the living word. And, there need to be fruits in their lives, and we need to use the discernment of spirits, that gift. And there's various ways. I don't have time to get into that. But words need to be confirmed. And so when somebody gets up and gives what they think is a prophetic word in a local congregation, and we encourage that, we need to discern the word. The other prophets, or those who are wise and mature, need to discern. And there may be some of the things that person said that are correct, and some of the things may be coming out of the soul, the person's mind, will, and emotions. So we need to discern. And if somebody honestly is giving what they believe is a prophetic word, and they have a humble spirit, if they happen to get some of it that's off, We don't want to hit them over the head. We want to encourage them and guide them and lead them. And we see the example of Nathan, who was a prophet. Not me, but the time of David. And he heard a word from Jehovah Elohim, and he gave it to David, King David. And it was off. He misinterpreted the word. And he had to go back to David and say, oh, I got it wrong. And he gave it to him right. Yah corrected him. That can happen. I think that one example is in the Bible to help us realize sometimes we might be off. That's why there needs to be accountability. And it's all right. As long as we correct it and don't just sweep it under the rug. There's too many people that call themselves prophets or act prophetic, and they make prophecies. Even in the Hebrew Roots Messianic movement, I could name one guy in particular who's big, well-known. He's made a lot of false prophecies. And guess what? Like a lot of them, they just sweep them under the rug and move on and go on. Instead of being accountable and saying, well, I screwed up, like David, and humble himself. No, that wouldn't be good for money. That wouldn't be good for business. That wouldn't be good for his ministry. That's all I'm going to say. Otherwise, I will go over the board and you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. That's why I don't hang out with that guy. He's been in my home and been in our congregation, and I cut him loose because he's dishonest. Doesn't mean what he has to say is bad. He teaches some good things, but he's dishonest. He's a money grubber, among other things. When we're giving prophetic words, I mentioned about the word prophetes in the Koine Greek. The word is navi. That's where the term nevi'im comes from, the prophets, plural. But navi is a prophet, and literally the root of it means to well up or spring up or boil up like a spring bubbling forth. But you will feel a prophetic word. There's different ways to explain it, but Jeremiah talked about fire being shut up in my bones. Sometimes but we got to be careful. Sometimes that can be the flesh. Just because you get a word, does not mean you're supposed to give it. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Maybe you're given a word, a prophetic word, so you can be an intercessor, prayer warrior for somebody or for a situation. So just because you get a word doesn't mean that you're supposed to give it, and if you are to give it, when, to whom, and where. You might get a prophetic word, but you're not supposed to give it for 10 years. And you got to wait for the Ruach to direct you where and who and when. There's a lot of different aspects of this. And then when you do give it, you better make sure that you're giving it in the right spirit. You've got to have your flesh man crucified. Otherwise, the soul is going to get in there in your own thoughts, and you're going to filter the word of Elohim through the grid of your own biases, your own psyche, or suke, your own will, mind, will, and emotions, and it's going to get twisted and come out something different than what Yehovah gave you, and now you're going to be either a false or a carnal prophet. And that's not going to make Yehovah Elohim very happy. So many times we have to sit and wait to make sure that our flesh is killed and crucified so we can go in the proper frame of mind and the proper spirit that we're supposed to go in when we give that prophecy. I've given prophetic words to people before, and some of them have been rebukes and have been fire burning. Other times I've gone weeping and crying for the brokenness of that person, and I feel the Father's heart. It all depends. And so if you're not sure if you're hearing from Yehovah or not, get it confirmed in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. Ask Yehovah, Yah, if you want me to give this word, confirm it from independent sources, and He will. Otherwise, you're supposed to just sit on it. Don't just run when He hasn't told you to run. There's so much more that could be said. We need the prophetic. We really do. Because the prophetic is the divine coming in and giving guidance and direction into the human realm. I've come convinced that much of the prophetic is not so much divine revelation per se, as in, did you just get a spiritual download? But when you spend your time, you spend years and decades immersed in this, studying it, so you get to know the heartbeat of the Father, the heartbeat of Yeshua, the heartbeat of the Ruach HaKodesh. You know the ways. You see the patterns of how He operates, how they operate, the Godhead. You understand these things. You can begin to then know what's going to happen next, because this is the pattern of things. You have a sense of how things, you begin to sense the breathing and the ebbing and the flowing of the Father and His heart. And out of that, the prophetic comes. I think there's a lot of that goes on. I understand He can hit you like a bolt of lightning, but more often than not, it comes out of knowing the heart of the Father, and you know what's going to happen next, and you can speak those things out, or encourage other people, or you see where they're headed, and you can help them. So, in closing, I want to encourage, if somebody is sensing a prophetic word, if somebody is feeling like they need to go to one of your elders, go to somebody, an older, mature, spirit-filled person, and we don't see those every day. All right. Well, he got a used one. How about so? That's the real thing. Yeah, and they can just about go anywhere too. Anyway, that belongs to. I'm not going to say it here on camera, but it belongs to them. What do they do with it? Oh, yeah. Oh, it's a small community, isn't it? Yeah. There must not be too many of them around. Anyway, so I would say, if you sense the Spirit wanting you to say something, pray about it. Ask your wife, ask your husband, get confirmation, wait, or go to spiritual elders, people you trust are mature in the faith, haven't been walking in it for just 5 or 6 or 3 or 4, 2 or whatever years, but have been walking, and have them pray and get it confirmed until you get raised up and and you have facility in these areas. Any questions or comments? This was just a skimming over the waves, but I hope it blessed somebody.
Seek the Lord while He may be found. Call upon His name. He's near, He's near, He's near. Yeshua Hashem Be'himatzov Kerahu Yoto Karov Yasov Rashad Darko Yishavim Machshevotav Yashovel Ad Hashem Yarbe is Yeshua Hashem Behimatzo Kerahu Yota Karo Seek the Lord while He may be found. Call upon His name. He is near, He is near. Yeshua Hashem Behimatzo Kerahu